Welcome into Unbreakable, a mental wealth podcast with Jay Glazer. I'm Jay Glazer, and our guest today, unbelievable. And you have heard of him, you've heard his voice. He was a pioneer in the sport of mixed martial arts, then crossed over to television. He's a Hall of Famer. Before I get to him, if you're like many people, you may be surprised to learn that 1 in 5 adults in this country experienced mental illness last year. Yet far too many fail to receive the support they need. Carolyn Behavioral Health is doing something about it. They understand that behavioral health is a key part of whole health, delivering compassionate care that treats physical, mental, emotional, and social needs in tandem. Carolyn Behavioral Health, raising the quality of life through empathy and action. Welcome into Unbreakable, a mental wealth podcast with Jay Glazer. And today's with Jay Glazer and a man who took an entire country and brought it with him to the UFC, the first fighter from Britain to fight in the UFC, a Hall of Famer, former UFC middleweight champion of the world. But probably the hardest thing he ever had to do was be my broadcast partner on the UFC on Fox. The abuse that I put him through, the one and only, the Count, Michael Bisping. How are you, brother?
You're absolutely right, Jay. I mean, listen, I've had some tough battles in my life. I've been beat every single day of my life. Sharing a studio with you, the biggest diva in all of sports. Oh, come on. That was the challenge. I'm like, I don't know if I can do it. I just don't know if I can do it. But hey, here we are. We're still smiling.
Was I abusive?
No. Do you know what? Actually, the first time I met you, I remember you walked in because you're a big deal, Jay. You're the voice of the NFL, and you're probably thinking, oh God, I got to work with these schmucks, these fighters that don't know what they're talking about. They don't know how to do the job. And to be fair, in those early days, we were all totally brand new. Right. So you walked in straight away. Whoever we were working with, took us into a back room. You said, look, listen. Forget about the studio, forget about the cameras and the lights and all the rest of it. This is just us sitting here at a bar.
In a bar. Yep.
Talking about the fights. That's all. Just think of it like that and ignore everything else. So thank you for that advice. Contrary to popular belief, you're a sweet old soul.
But it is right. I try and tell people, especially these football players come in, listen, you can sit there in a bar and talk about football all day long. When the cameras come on, you start talking differently. We're in a bar. We don't go, well, you got the number 1 ranked offense against the number 2 defense. We don't fucking talk like that. And just look at the camera as it's the bartender or your best friend. And the faster I was able to pick that up, the easier it was for me. And I think the easier it was for everybody else.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And fortunately, I was able to pass that kind of knowledge down. I remember Anthony Smith, when he first started, who's a great face on ESPN now and very, very polished. I said, look, listen, if you get stuck, I said, just look at me. That's all you got to do. Yep. I've always got something dumb to say. I've always got a stupid take. I've always got, hopefully a little bit of analysis as well. So if you get stuck, just look at me, because we all know the sports. You know what I mean? Whatever sports it is, we know it. That's why we're there. And if you forget about the camera, it gets a lot easier.
The other thing I told you, and I tell all our football players, is look, I tell my football players, I know more about the NFL than 99.99999% of the world, but I'll never know more than you. I don't know what it's like to be in a quarterback controversy or have my head coach fired or, to be put on, have a torn hamstring and I'm out certain number of weeks and people are wondering if I'm questionable or not, or have my locker room torn apart. I don't know that. You guys do. Yeah. So always teach me something that I don't know. And same for you. Like, listen, I've had early days, I had 2 fights, but I haven't been in a title fight. I haven't had a whole country behind me. I haven't been on the biggest stage in the world. You have. So always give me something that I don't know. And if you could do that and educate the fans that way, instead of giving us stats, man, you'll always be golden.
Yeah, absolutely, Jay. And that's why, fortunately, I've been able to parlay that into a career with the UFC commentating, because I don't need to tell you, you've been around the sport. It's tough. The road of a fighter, when you hang up the gloves, is like, what are you going to do? A lot of people struggle with that. That's why you see a lot of fighters coming out of retirement. A lot of people struggle, a lot of people, because it's a fantastic sport, but the people that do really well, they can make a really big living. They can, they can turn their lives around. I mean, I'm very lucky. I'm very, very lucky. I live in a beautiful house. I've got a career. I've got money in the bank. I've got savings, what I made. But not everybody gets that far, and certainly the life of a fighter afterwards, when you dedicate so much of your time and you put everything into it, because you've got to be all in. The road of a fight is tough. So yeah, as I say, for me, fortunately, I'm in a lucky position.
So I always ask, we've coached a lot of fighters, a lot of football players, a lot of different athletes, and it's my Unbreakable MMA program. It used to be called MMA Athletics. But I would always ask right out of the gate, I was always trying to find out why a fighter fights.
Yeah.
And, most of the time I always found a lot of times guys fought because they were bullied. And then even that, I try to dive deeper. Okay, well, do you want to fight now so you look the part so you don't get bullied anymore? Or do you want to get back at your bully? Because that's who I want, right? The guy who wants to get back at their bully. Why did you fight? What got you into this sport of fighting originally? Like, take me psychologically.
Yeah. So growing up in our house, my parents loved us. And they're fantastic. But there was a lot of violence, back in the day. I guess it was a different time, but my dad was, there was a lot of violence. Let's just put it like that on both sides, my mother and my father, So for me growing up, getting into a fight was very natural. So I got into a lot of fights when I was younger because I was an angry kid. Money was tight and there was a lot of bullying going on. My shoes falling apart and just not having the best clothes and stuff like that. And I used to get bullied a lot. And then I just remember one day thinking to myself, I'm not putting up with this anymore. And the next one that does it, the next person to talk shit, they're going to get it. And that's what I did. And anyone that talks shit, I started beating them up. Not badly, but just like... Right. Just giving him a crack or whatever.
but that's a brave moment in life because that's a scary decision to make at that time.
Yeah.
You're being bullied.
But what happened was, because I never had many friends because, it was a snobby town that I was in. Then all of a sudden, I went from not having many friends to all of a sudden being like kind of in the popular crowd because I was a bit of a badass. You know what I mean? So what that did, that kind of reinforced that kind of behavior. So I was getting into more and more fights all the time and like looking for the toughest guys around. And it was a very, very immature thing to do. But that was kind of like my badge of honor.
Yeah, that was
I could beat anybody in a fight. That was my thing. And if there was a guy in another town, there's an expression we use in England. It's cock of the school. Who's the cock of the school? Meaning the toughest guy. Right. It's like, who's the cock of that school? Well, come on, let's meet up and stuff like that. As I say, very childish, very immature, but that was kind of my badge of honor. I did martial arts from when I was 8 years old. I was very good. But then when I got to about 15, 16, I was just hanging out with my friends, partying, drinking, stuff like that. And my life was going nowhere. I left school at 16, did a string of dead-end jobs. You name it, I've done it. Nothing glamorous, all, crap, bottom feeder jobs, factory work, stuff like that. An honest, hard-working living, but you would do 60, 70 hours a week. And at the end of it, no money, barely scraping by. So we would live for the weekend, just get hammered drunk, get into a few bar fights, stuff like that. And then I got into my mid-20s. Well, no, sorry, pardon me, my early 20s. I met a beautiful lady. She's now my wife and we have 3 children. She definitely helped the emotional side. But then, and so I calmed down. I learned some lessons and, she got me on the right track. And I'm so grateful for her coming into my life and turning me around. But financially, I wasn't setting the world on fire. At this point, we'd had 2 children, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what my skills were, where I was going to go, but I just wanted to make a success of my life. And I remember this guy that I was working with, he said to me, he said, Michael, he said, you're a pretty smart kid. He said, is this what you want to do for the rest of your life? And I said, no, absolutely not. He said, well, you need to give it some thought. He said, because I walked through those doors 25 years ago, and it feels like that. He said, before you know it, you're going to be almost 50 years old, 45, whatever, and life will pass you by. And that really struck me. So I started thinking.
I got goosebumps right there, man.
Yeah, no. And I this guy, I'm not in contact with him. I've looked him up on Facebook because I'm so grateful.
Because I did it. Wow.
Yeah, I did some soul searching and I kept coming back to one thing. The thing that I'm best at was always, for good or bad, fighting. That is my skill. So I thought, I'm going to become a professional fighter. And back then, I was thinking about becoming a boxer. Right. I'm going to become a professional boxer. I'm going to do it. And I spoke to a few people. My dad advised me to join the army. And if I went in the army, because I was born on a military base. My family's a military family. So I was going to join the army. And if you get on the boxing team and you're good, they'll just pay you to train boxing. And there's a couple of fighters, well-known guys in England that had that same path. And then you come out of the army and you turn pro. So basically you're getting paid to train. So that was my idea. But then I bumped into like an old sensei of mine, and he told me all about something called UFC. I'd never even heard of it. I didn't follow it. This is 2003. and 2002, and he told me all about it. He said the champions out there, they're making big money. They're acting in Hollywood movies and all this kind of stuff. And he painted this whole picture for me, and he put this vision in my head. And I was like, wow, well, that's what I want to do. And that was, and that guy, for whatever reason, we fell out. He ended up suing me because money's the root of all evil. And for him, I was just a project that he picked up and put down. For me, this was my life. And then he moved off to New Zealand. That's actually what happened. He moved to New Zealand. Years later, I did well in the UFC, and he sued me because he had a contract. Anyway, whatever. So we don't talk. But he put this vision in my mind. And so 3 months later, I quit work. I moved to another city. I slept in my car 5 days a week, trained Monday to Friday, drove home. I used to do a bit of nightclub DJing. So I DJ at the weekends, make a little bit of money, just enough to pay the bills. And 2 years later, I was on the Ultimate Fighter in the UFC, and the rest is history.
Wow. That's so I always picked you up when you were on the Ultimate Fighter, not before that. So when you came to the UFC, right? You're bringing a whole country.
I guess, yeah.
I mean, you did first Brit to fight in the UFC, right?
Yeah. No, there was a guy called Ian Freeman that fought before.
Oh, yeah,
me.
Yeah, that's right.
I was kind of, I had, the biggest splash, the biggest career, if you will.
Sure.
So, yeah, to your point, I mean,
you're
I'm trying to be
bringing a
humble.
country, right?
Yeah, all humbleness aside, you're absolutely right. I was aware of that.
Did you realize it, or did you block that out?
Well, do you know what? To be honest, this is pre-social media. So I had no idea. I'm from a small little town in the north of England called Clitheroe, and it's a small town, and it's very working class, and there was no social media. There was no Instagram or anything like that, and the sport was growing massively, but I was unaware of it. I was in my little bubble. Do you know what I mean? So I had no idea. I remember the first fight. I went on the Ultimate Fighter. I won the Ultimate Fighter. I was very proud of that. So I was the first Brit to be on the Ultimate Fighter, first one to win it, and now I was in the UFC on a good contract. And then, but I still had no idea about the fan base in the UK until my second fight in the UFC. My first one was in Las Vegas. My second fight was in Manchester. And I remember being backstage warming up, as you do. And then I walked out, and the arena just exploded. It was insane. 22,000 people. And Kevin Ioli from Yahoo Sports wrote this. This is not my words. He's a long-time respected boxing journalist. He said, I've been in some loud arenas before. I've been there for Mike Tyson fights. I've been there for Ricky Hatton fights. He said, I've never heard a crowd as loud as that. And I walked out, and it blew my mind. My adrenaline just spiked like crazy because I had no idea people had been watching on TV. The adrenaline spiked. I sprinted to the Octagon like an absolute maniac, tried to get in the ring with no mouthpiece, still with my hoodie on and my shoes and everything. They're like, what are you doing? Calm the hell down. I was like a maniac. Fortunately got the job done, but almost blew it because, I did not stick to a game plan.
Is that the night you realized life changed?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, to be honest, when I won the Ultimate Fight, I was like, things are going well. When I fought in Las Vegas, I was like, this is great. And then, obviously with that, then I kind of realized there was such support, and I had no idea. And that's why I've always been very grateful for the people of the UK supporting my career, because along the ways, over the years, I've had a long career. It's been 20 years since when I made my UFC debut almost. I've let my emotions get the better of me at times and things like that. But people always realize that I was just an average guy. And you don't always put your best foot forward. Sometimes you make mistakes.
Well, here's my question also about, you again represent the country, because it can go both ways. Did you look at it like these people fueled me, or was there more pressure on you because you had a whole nation?
Always more pressure. I mean, it was a great position to be in, of course, no regrets, but yeah, absolutely more pressure, because I was not only representing myself and my family, they were number one. That was why I was doing it. I was trying to earn some money and give my family the best life possible. But of course, I'm also representing an entire nation. But it wasn't a burden. There was a little bit of pressure. It wasn't a burden. It was pressure that I was very happy to have on my shoulders.
How did you, because again, it seems like early on in life, you just beat everybody's ass, right? Then you came in, had early success in the UFC. How did you handle early losses?
Yeah. So the big one was at UFC 100 when I fought Dan Henderson. We coached the season of the Ultimate Fighter. I acted like a bit of an idiot at times. I was young, I was immature, I was, whatever. And Dan Henderson's a bloody legend. But we still don't get on to this day. But I got knocked out spectacularly. It was a vicious knockout. Fair play to him. He got me good. And for a long time, because I was like public enemy number one, because the whole season was UK versus USA. So I was captain of the UK, and obviously 1776 and all the rest of it. They were like, fuck Bisping. And, I was that guy. And I played up to it. Of course I did. I was like, yeah, all right. You want to boo? You want something to talk shit about? I'll give you something to talk shit about. And then he knocked me out. So yeah, online there was,
and then made T-shirts with him flying with a flying elbow, with him knocking you out. So
merchandise, you name it. And for me, the way it always was, because like a lot of guys, and kind of in trend with what your podcast is about, fighters we're tough guys, right? So we don't talk about our feelings, and I never did. Yeah, of course it sucks, but when I came back to my hotel room after coming from the hospital, because I didn't know where I was for a long time. My friends and family have all come over to see me and support me. So I'm like, oh, come on, guys. You're just part of the business. Let's go out. Let's party. So we went out and had a heavy night in Vegas. When I came home back to England, I never addressed any of it, never speak about any of it, and just bury it away. Say, oh, whatever. That's the way it goes. You win some, you lose some. Let's go. And I always kind of did that. But in that fight there, I never spoke about it, never spoke about my disappointment, never spoke about how, obviously, if I won that, I was going to fight for the belt and stuff. And I just, never addressed it at all. And it was about 2 months later, I think I was laid in bed. It was a Sunday morning and Rocky was on. And the way Stallone portrays what the fighters go through in those movies is absolutely perfect. And I was sitting there and I just burst into tears one day. And my wife could hear me. She ran up and said, what's going on? What's going on? And I guess it was just all that emotion that had been bottled up for so long that I refused to speak about because, but it is, I'm like, you just brush it off and get on with it.
Yeah. It's funny because, again, I've trained all these guys, and part of my mentality training them is I always have this thing, neutral face. If you're tired, don't fucking show me.
Yeah.
If you're hurt, don't fucking show me. Do not fucking show me. Because then I forget I'm tired. I just sharpen my weapons. I ramp it up on you, right? And you could beat a guy in a stool doing that. However, now that I'm trying to help people and athletes and veterans and everybody with their mental health, it's complete opposite. I'm like, no, show it, tell it, talk about it. The more you could do, unpack it, fucking tell your brother or your teammate, because the more you could do that, man, the better it's going to make us feel, the more vulnerable we can get. That's true strength. So it is a absolute opposite of everything that we coach or coached in sport, but it doesn't work in real life. And then again, you found that out, and it's energizing when you realize it, but we still have such a road to go to get more athletes and combat vets and just any dude to start opening up about their shit. But the more of us who do it, who are kind of the center of dudism, like no one's questioning your manhood. You can fucking cry right here. No one's going to call you a puss. No one's questioning my manhood, so I could do it. So I think more of us need to do that, show people it's okay outside that cage.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because, people look at us. And as I said, if you go back to when I was younger, when I was getting into fights, we always want to be the tough guy. We portray ourselves as the ultimate alpha male and all the rest of it. But, we're still the same old people. We're still human beings inside. So things do get to you. And it's great to see that in this day and age now, people are being encouraged to. And I know you do a lot of great work, Jay, so well done for that. But there's still a long way to go. There's still a long way to go. And to be honest, even for me, you know what I mean? I've still got a long way to go. I'm still of kind of that mindset. I'm just don't address things and I'll let things boil. I don't talk about it. And then I'll just fucking explode like a maniac. Whereas if I had just spoke about it and talked about it and addressed the problem right then and there, it wouldn't have become this massive tornado that it became, or this huge volcano, or an earthquake, or a life-ending situation.
Now that you know it, you should just do it. Like, hey, this is a much better route for me, right?
I know.
You just got to change your habits. Yeah.
Easier said than done, though. Easier said than done. Problem is with me, Jay, there's a lot of issues. Which one did we tackle first?
hey, buddy, I'm right there with you.
I know.
I always talk about our show on Fox NFL Sunday. So, man, there's 6 of us on the panel, but there's 18 personalities, and Terry Bradshaw and I got 13 of them. So
exactly. Tell me about it.
Those roommates in my head do not get along too often, as we both know.
Yeah.
Hey, so here's the other thing about your style that I love. Love. more significant strikes than anybody in the history of the UFC, right? And listen, I used to tell guys who were going to fight you, they have a certain range. And I'm like, you don't fucking control the range against that guy. What are you fucking doing? There's one guy in particular who was training in our gym and he fucking put his hands down. I'm like, what are you fucking doing? Like, you don't control the range. I got the range. You do not got the range against Michael Bisping. Where is it in your point? Because I think that's the greatest weapon. Pressure and pace is the greatest fucking weapon anybody could ever have. Like, relentless. I learned it from Randy Couture. Like, you just don't stop. Yep. And eventually people are going to go, I didn't fucking sign up for this. Get fucking Michael Bisping off. Get Randy Couture off. I did not sign up for this shit. At what point in your career did you make that decision to go, all right, if they throw one, I'm going to throw five?
Yeah. To be honest, it came very, very early on. When I was younger, I did a lot of martial arts and I did a lot of kickboxing tournaments and fights. And it started because when I was younger, I won all these tournaments easily. And then I got very complacent and I wouldn't even train. And then kickboxing fights, I was knocking people out in one round. And, so that's why I knew I could fight back in the day when I decided I was going to do this, because I wasn't even really training. And then I was hanging out with the boys for a few months, and I hadn't been near a gym. I'd got kind of heavy and fat. And my kickboxing coach at the time called me up. He said, there's a British title this weekend. The guy just dropped out. He said, you been training? I said, yeah, I've been training. He says, can you make whatever weight it was on Friday? I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay. So I took this fight. It was 8 rounds for the British heavyweight title, British light heavyweight title. And I thought I'll just do him like I do everybody else. And I went out there and I tried to kill him for the first 4 rounds. And I did a pretty good job of doing that, but I didn't. And then I got tired, but so tired. It was unbelievable. And for the next 4 rounds, he beat the absolute dog shit out of me. And it was horrible. It was the worst experience. It's not a team sport. You can't fall back. You can't hide in the pack. You can't let other people pick up the slack. It's just you and your opponent and the referee. And it's the loneliest place on earth. I could hardly even keep up my hands. I'm eating shots. It was horrible. So I learned after that, I am never, ever going into a fight tired ever again. And that was kind of my style when I first started, just like a blaze of pace and aggression, because if you keep up this pace, eventually you can weaponize your cardio and eventually your opponent's going to get tired. And when they get tired, they start to make mistakes. And when they make mistakes, that's when you can take over and finish the fight. So whilst I had good boxing and kickboxing and decent jiu-jitsu and stuff, I was never the best at anything, but I always made sure I was the hardest worker in the room. I was always going to be in the best shape. And when you do that, you go into the fight very confident as well. Mm-hmm. When you're going into a fight, if you've been lazy, if you haven't done the road work, if you've skipped some strength and conditioning classes, whatever the case may be, when you're in the ring and it's you and your opponent and Bruce Buffer's in the middle, he's in your face, that's the most nerve-wracking time. You're shitting your pants, right? Regardless of what you've done. When they say fight, you're kind of on autopilot, right? And what happens will happen. But in that moment when you're standing there, Bruce Buffer is saying your name and stuff, if you know you've done everything, if you know you've done the cardio, the road work, the sparring, you've left no stone unturned, you can stand there more confident because you're like, you know what, at least I'm showing up the best version of myself. So I always made sure to bring my A game and know that in those moments I can be confident, hey, I'm prepared as I ever can be.
Obviously you win a title against Luke Rockhold on how many days notice? Yeah, 8 days notice. What was it?
2 weeks.
2 weeks notice, right? 2 weeks notice. For those of us who have not had our hand raised in a world title fight, take us behind your eyes when you actually, when you see him go down.
Yeah. And
then how long after you see him go down does it sink in, man, my life has changed forever. I am the middleweight champ of the world.
Yeah. So obviously I'd fought Luke before, for those people that don't know. I know you know. And he beat me in the second round. For those people that don't know either, this is a fake eye, so I'm blind in one eye. So I've got a whole long story about that. But
I got a whole long story about that too, because we got in trouble one night at my bar because I was making fun of you too much. And then you try to take it out of Dominic Cruz by throwing.
No, I didn't. He was being a little prick.
He was being a little prick, but we both were. I'm just glad you didn't fucking throw at me. You threw it at Dominic. We had threw you
talking shit like always. Anyway, so when I fought Luke Rockhold, he'd already beaten me. At that point, I was starting to venture out and do a little bit of, TV work and acting and stuff like that. So I was on a film set in Canada shooting Triple X, and I get the opportunity to fight. I still had 3 days filming left to finish. I fly straight home to the gym, train for about 10 days. When I went into the fight, I was a 10-1 underdog for obvious reasons. Luke Rockhold was the man at the time. He was dominating everybody. He was the champion. And he'd already beaten me, to be fair. So I'm in the ring. And because I didn't have a full training camp, the plan was I've got to swing for the fences. I've got to try and knock this guy out. I can't go 5 rounds. I know that. I don't want to be like that kid in that kickboxing fight again. You know what I mean? So I was swinging. And, I was kind of out of range and all the rest of it. And I remember he come in, I went to the body and then over the top. And as a fighter, when you connect with a good shot, right? And I'm there and I'm like, and it all slows down, like to very, very slow. It's like, your mind, the way it controls the fight, and you see it all in slow motion. I remember the impact on the glove thinking, oh, that was a good one.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden he falls down. I'm like, oh shit, he's down. And he gets up again. I'm like, no, you don't, buddy. Boom. And he goes back down. I remember he was on the floor, and I'm like, shit, don't go into his guard. He's got good jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Don't play that game. Stay away. And I was like, boom, boom. And I started teeing off on his head. Then all of a sudden, I had Big John McCarthy's gigantic forearms dragging me off him. But that was the best feeling because I realized I was the champion of the world. So right after that, I jump on top of the fence, and I turn around, and I point, and I say, fuck you. But I wasn't talking about Luke Rockhold. That was aimed at all the haters, everyone that said throughout the entirety of my career, he's not good enough, he's not big enough, he's not strong enough, he's not skilled enough. I'd had it my entire life. You were never going to make it. The teachers didn't like me at school. Fucking everyone throughout my fucking life. Wow. That's who that was targeted at. Every wanker that went on online and wrote a shitty article about me. Every person on Twitter, that was a giant fuck you to the fucking world, because now here I am as the champion of the goddamn world. So eat that.
Wow. That's hey, talking about us saying, hey, we got to let it out. That's letting it out. But you must have felt like the weight of the world was off your shoulders at that moment.
I mean, for a moment, yeah. Until Monday morning when I got booked for another fight, but for a weekend it felt
good. So, at what point though do you realize? Okay, I asked you before, about life changing, right? In the early part. At what point or what thing happened after you won the title? Do you go? Did something happen? You're like, oh my God, life has really changed here.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because at the time you don't realize it. You're just living life. When I look back now to 2016 and the life I was living there and the things that were going on, I fought Anderson Silva, I fought Luke Rockhold, I fought Dan Henderson. I was all over the place. I had some crazy holidays. I was filming Triple X with Vin Diesel. I was down in Brazil promoting movies. I was in London training for a world championship fight whilst filming a movie at the same time. But at that time, you're just taking it all in your stride. It's just like, what's happening? When I look back now, I go, shit, that was a crazy year. There was a lot of crazy stuff going on, and there was a few things as well, that I can't get into right now, but some stuff that I did, and I was I went all over the world in 1 year. It was insane. So, but at that time, you're just experiencing it, and you don't really have time to step back out of it and look and think, wow, what's actually going on here, But yeah, it was a great experience, and very grateful for all the doors it's opened. And now I get to sit here and talk to you.
You went from a high point to a low point.
I know. What's going on?
So basically, you now view it though, almost like you're viewing a really awesome TV show.
Oh, for sure, yeah, right. Yeah. But there's still a few spin-off series coming from that TV show. You know what I mean? So the journey isn't over. As I said, I'm very lucky. I'm blessed. You know what I mean? So the life of a fighter is hard. And I've been very fortunate enough to keep it going. And I remember when I went on The Ultimate Fighter, there was one of the guys on there. He was on Team Shamrock, and his name was Tate Fletcher. Yep. And he does some acting.
He's acting now, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he's acting. He does a lot of work, a lot of big films. Yeah. And I'll never forget these words that Tate Fletcher said to me, because he's a very philosophical kind of guy. I'm just a meathead from England. He says to me, Michael, he puts his hand out and says, we've all been given a grape here with this opportunity, and it's up to us what we do with this grape. Some of us, they'll just eat the grape right here. Some of you can take that grape. Some of us can take that grape and make wine. out of it, you know, and that always kind of stuck with me as well. And so I've always been trying to think about what's next, what's the next phase of my career. That's why I wanted to work at Fox Sports with people like yourself, because I was always aware that this doesn't last forever.
Right,
and I was always worried about going back, because I always had like imposter syndrome. I felt like at some point this is all going to collapse, right? And I'm going to be back in Clitheroe. I'm going to be broke again. That's the town where I'm from, Clitheroe. I'm going to be back there. I'm going to be broke. We're going to be struggling to pay the bills and all the rest of it, and stressed out. So I always felt it was going to go back there. It's only a matter of time. And believe it or not, this is a very weird way of looking at things, because I'm 45 now. I'm 45. I'm like, well, hold on a minute. I've only got to make it through a few more years. So where that isn't a reality. Do you know what I'm saying? Because I'm always worried.
We all do it, dude.
How long am I going to keep this ride going for?
Yeah, we all do it. We all got that fear that tomorrow it's all going to be gone. We're going to be broke. I started doing this in the NFL Insider work in '93. And it's been every year like, it's going to go away. And I started the minute-by-minute breaking news cycle. And I was the first host of an MMA show in America. And done them all. And you still, one thing I do try and work on now is that beast is what drives, that anxiety is what drives us to be what we are.
Of course.
At some point, we got to get that beast to take a rest so we can enjoy our lives. And that's our great,
that's
our great, that's our great fight now.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And that my wife, she's always like, because not that I'm a whore for work or anything, but I'm a workaholic. I'm always doing something, and she's like, Michael, you got to learn to say no to stuff.
Yeah,
and I'm like, well, I can't say no to this opportunity because I don't know if this opportunity is going to come again. You know what I'm saying? So I'm very lucky. I work hard, but I enjoy it as well because I've done.
You have to enjoy it. Yes. It's one thing
I
learned
enjoy
early.
it. It doesn't really feel like I feel, again, calling it work. Right, I'm going to go to Vegas this week and I'm going to commentate on some fights. I'll be honest, I'd do that for free because I absolutely love it. Just don't tell Dana White. But I would, though, if they gave me the opportunity, because I'm so passionate about the sport. So I don't feel like I'm working. It's a passion.
Just so you know, you go through waves. So there's sometimes, I'm loving it out there. And sometimes I'm like, afraid I'm going to lose it. It goes on. So that is my biggest wrestling match moving forward now is how do I just get it where that beast and the anxiety, like the anxiety, I needed it for a while. I don't fucking need it anymore. Like I need to put it over here now. Right. But it's hard to be able to say, hey, you're good. Go sit over there. So I want you to hear that part of it. Because one thing I started putting in my head this verse I read in a prayer book, appreciate the toil of the climb. So it's not that I got to the top. It's this whole journey, that's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Yeah.
Right, so now a lot of times when I'm sitting there just watching games at Fox and, like when we're back in our avocado room, we call it, our green room, just sitting there like, thank you, my best friend, God Almighty. This is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Not up there on TV, not making all this money, just the journey itself. Right. So that for me is beautiful. And the other part is that I want you to realize, and every other fighter out there, a football player to get, you being a world champion, okay, that's part of who you are. But the real meat of who you are, okay, is the fact that you fucking outworked everybody else to take those 3 steps up on the cage. And you talk about the imposter syndrome. That fucking greatness doesn't suddenly leave when the gloves come off. Even if you lose, I don't care if you're 0-80. You did something and you worked at something that 99.99999% of the world will never, ever, ever be willing or able to do. That's your fucking equity going forward, not the – and like I deal with this, a lot of football players, though, hardly anybody goes out on their own shield. Like you get fucking thrown out, right? And usually your last year is what you remember most, and not the fact that, hey, you fucking did something special. Football and fighting, it's not a career, it's an opportunity to have something greater in life. Whether that's you found out who you are or it leads to something else, they're opportunities.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you, Jay, for saying that. And I totally agree, and I'm still finding other opportunities, still finding a way to bullshit and con people to still give me a job, but it's going well. It's going well. I'm living a life now that I never thought possible. I touched on it before. I lost a vision in my right eye. And I thought my livelihood, part of me, is going to be taken away. And I'm not going to be able to fight anymore. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? I've just moved to America. We've just bought this big, stupid house that we don't need. I'm under a lot of financial burden, a lot of financial stress. And my fight career is gone. It's done. So I was absolutely terrified. Fortunately, now I was able to step away from the fight game, well, not step away from the fight game, step away from fighting itself. And I'm still able to do what I love and be a part of it. And that, for me, that's an achievement in itself, and I'm very proud of it.
Good, man. Good. I like that. We got to work on that. We got to work on loving ourselves up, because we don't know how to do that shit. We work on beating ourselves up. We work on all the imposter syndrome and all that shit, but we don't work enough on loving ourselves up. And that's one thing I want us all to start doing more.
Yeah, yeah.
By the way, I never asked you this. How the hell did you get cleared when you couldn't see out of your right eye?
Well, that's a long, long story, and I'm going to tell a lot of lies. Yeah, for anyone that's watching this that doesn't know, this is a prosthetic eye. I can pull it out right now, but I'm not going to.
Oh, please do. Yeah, no, do not. No, don't. We're good.
It almost came out. So, yeah, but I only got that in 2018. Because a doctor could look at that and clearly see you've got a prosthetic eye in. What are you doing?
Yeah, because we were working, you were putting oil in your eye.
Yeah, I was always I cheated tests. I cheated, a lot of lies, a lot of bullshit, and a lot of nerves, a lot of anxiety, because I always thought every fight I have, because you do a medical test once a year, but then every time you fight, the day before the fight at the weigh-ins, you do a quick medical, and it's not very in depth, but so they check your heart, and they look into your eyes, and they go, follow my finger, just a few things like that. And they'd always say, so I was like, all they had to do was cover up my good eye and be like, how many fingers? How many fingers? Because they'd say, can you see out of that eye fine? I'd say, yeah, absolutely I can. Yeah, sure. But that's all they had to do, but they never did. But to be on the safe side, I had a little code, right? So I was there with Jason Perillo. I'm like, right, look, listen, if he covers up my good eye and says, how many fingers am I holding up? If he does one, go, oh, just a quick yawn. If it's two, go, cough.
Really?
Yeah. If it's
oh,
three,
my God.
Yeah. But we never had to use it.
What was three?
I forget what it was now. It was something like.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was like, but we never had to do it because we had the paperwork. I memorized the test and stuff like that. So it was very stressful because you train your ass off. You pay training partners. I was fighting all over the world, Australia or wherever. I'm going to fly my whole team out, pay for hotels, flights for them. And then the day before, I might get rumbled. Do you know what I mean? So the whole time I'm living in a state of anxiety going, oh, God. And then when I got past that was it. The weight was off my shoulders up. Now it's the easy stuff. Now all I got to do is fight. Do you know what I mean? Getting to the fight was the challenge for me. So, yeah.
Dude, that's unbelievable. And I never asked you. I was just like, I had no idea. That's fantastic.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do.
Tell Jason Perillo, that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
You got to do what you got to do.
All right, last question for you, brother. This is called the Unbreakable Mental Wealth Podcast. Give me the moment in your life that should have broken you, could have broken you, but didn't. And as a result, you came out the other side of that tunnel unbreakable forever.
Yeah. Okay. So that's an interesting question. And I was going to talk about the eye thing, because that was hard. But I'm not going to say that because I've just been talking about that. You don't want to hear about all that again. I think for me, I was on a crossroads in life. When I was younger, I was getting into a lot of fights. As I said, I was acting like an idiot. I was never a criminal, but I was always just getting into bar fights with willing participants, I might add. Do you know what I mean? But just drunk with a group of guys, small town mentality, always just having stupid brawls and stuff. But you start to develop a reputation. I remember I got into this fight one time, and the guy didn't even press charges, but I got arrested on a public order offense. And I got arrested, I got taken to court, and it wasn't the first time I'd been there. And the judge was just sick of me not learning my lesson. So he sentenced me to 28 days in prison. And I remember at the time my lawyer said, listen, all you're going to get is like £100 fine. It's nothing. It's public order, right? So just plead guilty. If I pleaded not guilty, no one could have gone against me because there was no one pressing charges. Yeah. But he said, just plead guilty. Okay, you'll get like £100 fine. It's nothing. I was like, okay. And my wife was at the back of the courtroom. She was pregnant with our first son at the time. She was like 8 months pregnant. And the judge comes out and he sentences me to 28 days. So right then and there, they take me downstairs. I get put in handcuffs. I get taken to the prison. I get hosed down, put in bloody, the jumpsuit and everything. And I was on 23-hour-a-day lockup. It was a maximum security prison. I shouldn't have transferred there. And, you know, I was locked up with bloody murderers and rapists and all the rest of it. And I remember before I go through the process where they, you know, assign you your cell and stuff, you get put in a holding cell. And I remember sitting in this holding cell, and we're talking just absolute degenerates and scumbags and criminals and whatnot. You know, just shitty human beings. And they're all talking, oh, hopefully I'll get my old cell and all the rest of it. And I just sat there and I just looked around and I was like, how the fuck did it come to this? Wow. How did it come to this? You know, I'm like, I'm not a bad person. I'm a good person. I've got a beautiful girlfriend. She's pregnant. What am I doing? What the hell am I doing with my life that I've made these decisions that's resulted in me being here? You know? And I said to myself right then and there that day, I said, that's it. I am done. I am never getting into another fight on the street and acting like an idiot and prioritizing hanging out with friends and boozing and just being a fucking thug and stuff. You know what I mean? I thought, I've got to make some changes. And right then and there, that's when I made those changes mentally. And I came out, I held down a job. A year later, I started training to become a professional fighter. But it was that right there, that was the turning point. And I was at a crossroads. I could have continued and it would have been a nasty road and I would have become absolutely nothing and a loser and statistic, or I could be sitting here talking to the great Jay Glazer. So I'm glad I took that path.
Bam! That's just it. Hey, life is about our choices. That's the best choice you've made.
Yeah, no, it really was. It really was.
Amazing. The Count, Michael Bisping, UFC Hall of Famer. My brother, I appreciate you so much coming on. I know it took a little while, but man, hey, you're family forever. You know that.
Oh, 100%, Jay. Always a pleasure to talk to you, buddy. And thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Love you, brother. Michael Bisping.